Welcome to Hair of the Werewolf. I'm Chase, and I'm here with my co-host, Lily.
Hello.
We are a supernatural horror podcast where we tell each other crazy, scary stories that are allegedly true and often have a few drinks along the way to make it a little bit more fun. I see Lily has a glass of rum in front of her.
I simply rum.
And it's just straight because she's going hard today.
Excuse me. There was ice in here at some point.
So it's diluted now. But
it's a little diluted, yeah.
But you're like, the next one won't have any worthless ice to ruin my drink.
Also, I think I said diluted, not diluted. Such a diluted drink.
This totally has...
He just like literally stopped working. Okay, anyway.
Well, I'm drinking this new stuff from Hop Larkin Boulder. It's called Hop Tea. And as the name implies, it's cans of tea with hops in it. But it's non-alcoholic, but it is carbonated. So I'd say it's actually...
Is it a win, you would say, for the non-alcoholic drinking establishment?
So I wholly expected it to be terrible. And I was shocked that I actually quite like it. The hops do taste different than they do in a beer, though. They are still bitter, and they're there, but they actually kind of taste more like hops smell before you brew with them. So it's a smell that I'm very, very partial to.
Yeah.
But it is different than drinking like an IPA or whatnot. But yeah, right now I'm drinking the green tea one that's made with mosaic hops, which I think might be my favorite of them.
Nice.
So good. I mean, it's good that I can still drink something that makes me feel like I'm drinking with everyone else, even though it's non-alcoholic.
It like makes you feel like you're part of it. Yeah. Part of the whole fun of drinking culture. Yeah, I understand.
My only complaints are it's not super cheap, but
yeah.
It's also hard to find. It's mostly like co-ops and whatnot. So I'm really hoping it catches on so I can find it in more places and so it doesn't disappear. But I'm totally into it. So it's nice to have something fun to drink.
Exactly. And I have my rum. So we're all good.
And we are actually recording this on Valentine's Day.
Yes, happy Valentine's Day for all of you who love candy and stuff.
Which isn't necessarily a holiday that people associate with horror, but that would be selling it short. Because if you want horror on Valentine's Day, there are several amazing movies.
There's some good ones.
There's My Bloody Valentine, and then there's the remake. They're both good, but the original one's the best.
For sure.
And then there's Just Valentine, which came out when we were in high school, which is a total teen scream with, it's got, man, what names are it?
Denise Richards. And it's got, oh my God, I keep forgetting your name.
That one chick who was the pregnant girl on...
Sugar and Spice.
Oh, it's got that girl too, but no, It has that one girl who was pregnant in Knocked Up.
Oh, Elizabeth? No, I'm so off.
And it's also got the guy from Angel who looks weird.
Oh, yeah. I never saw that show, although I never saw Buffy either, so obviously I have no idea what you're talking about. I mean, I do, but I never saw it.
But anyway, I mean, is it a good film? No. But is it totally, totally worth watching? Absolutely. Good kills, good fun stuff. So anyway, embrace horror on Valentine's Day. And hopefully you'll think about it when you listen to this episode that Valentine's Day can be a pretty scary time.
Exactly.
As long as you want it to be.
And speaking of which, I have a Valentine's Day themed horror story for you.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I specifically... looked for this. Like, I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I knew I wanted it associated with Valentine's Day. So this is the St. Valentine's Day Massacre / Hauntings.
Oh, okay. So I know the St. Valentine's Day Massacre,
but
I don't know anything about the Hauntings. I went through a phase where I got obsessed with American gangster era during Prohibition and everything. So pretty into that, but I know nothing about the Hauntings. So I'm pretty excited.
Well, actually, I'm pretty excited about that too, because I'm not gonna lie, I had no idea about it. Like I never went through that phase. I think I went from like super aggro teenager to like party girl in our early 20s, and then like just what I am now. So yeah.
Well, at the very least, when we rewatch Oscar, which is a hilarious film that everyone should see, there's a joke at the beginning about the St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's right.
There's a scene when his accountant comes up to him and says, I came to speak.
That fell on you so
If we were doing the drinking game, it'd mean I'd have to drink.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's been a while since a pad fell on us.
But it's not just a pad. It's like
this giant cardboard with
12 pads on a giant board that came at me.
12 pads came. That would have been 12 shots, by the way.
Even the house is haunted on Valentine's Day. But yeah, no, in the movie Oscar, his accountant comes to him and says, well, I came to speak to you about it the other day. And he said, I don't remember that. And he goes, you were working. It was St. Valentine's Day.
Oh,
and then,
my God.
And Sylvester Stallone just starts laughing, goes, oh, yeah.
Oh, that is terrible. Oh, that's amazing. That went over my head. I just thought, I'm not going to lie, I thought it was a sex joke. Like, oh, yeah, I was working on, I don't know.
Nope. All right, this is exciting. So a lot of our listeners probably don't know about it, so I'm going to play dumb, and I'll just let you tell that part of the story.
Okay, I'll let you tell. Yes, let me tell the story, but also, if you have other facts that I'm not saying, please.
It's a horror podcast. We got to get through this to get to the horror.
True. Okay, so obviously this took place on February 14th in 1929. Around 10:30 a.m. is like the estimated time frame. 7 people involved with the North Side Gang in Chicago were brutally murdered. The 4 assailants were never convicted because they were never officially captured. And this is an important distinction because you'll find out why.
Did you mention, I might have just missed it, that this was in Chicago?
Chicago, yes.
Like the heart of American gangster
Chicago,
era.
Illinois. Scruff McGruff. Just kidding, I have no idea.
Chi-Town. Yeah, Scruff McGruff is there. I still even, I think I remember Scruff McGruff's song. It goes, he sang it so you would know the address to send your letter to. It was
yes.
Scruff McGruff, Chicago, Illinois, 60652.
I never remembered it. I remember specifically like running to get a pen and pencil because my dumb ass would not remember those numbers.
And then at the end, he would just like, help me take a bite out of crime.
And I wanted to help, but I couldn't. I could never.
I loved the ads. They were so cool. I mean, he was a dog in like a detective coat. He just looked awesome.
I just want to know how many kids like wrote not having any important information to give, would just be like, I'll help you, Scruff McGruff or something, because that's something I would have done. Okay. Anyway, yes, Chicago. And at the time, there were rival gangs between the Irish and the Italians for control in organized crime during Prohibition. Now, for those of you who are not either from the U.S. or know a lot about U.S. history, Prohibition took place between 1920 and 1933. The United States decided to literally prohibit the sale of distribution and like consumption of alcohol at any capacity. This was a ban that was placed nationwide in an effort to control the rise of alcoholism and alcohol-based crimes that were occurring at the time.
That was an amendment to the Constitution.
It was literally in the Constitution. Yeah, absolutely. So
it did not go well.
Long story short, it did not work. And in fact, crime seemed to only become more organized. Mm-hmm. So it really dirtied it up. I mean, alcohol was going to exist, and now it was just bad news. Which brings me to the rival gangs. The murder occurred at the garage located on 2122 North Clark Street in Lincoln Park. Witnesses saw 2 men dressed as police officers and 2 men wearing suits, ties, an overcoat, and a hat. Basically your standard sharp-looking gang member attire. Mm-hmm. They exited the building after multiple shots were heard. So that's like what witnesses saw. And when police arrived at the scene, they found 7 people shot to death. Investigators and forensic analysts believe that the whole thing went down like this. First, the 2 police officers went into the warehouse, making the gangsters believe it was a raid. The cops, quote unquote, lined the 7 men along a brick wall and their backs towards them, so the gangsters were facing the wall. This way, they wouldn't see the other 2 guys come in with their Thompson submachine guns, a.k.a. Tommy guns, a.k.a. the Chicago typewriter. A.k.a. the Chicago piano. No joke. Those are like just some cute nicknames.
Chicago typewriter. I love it.
I love it too, in a horrifying kind of way. It was also called the trench broom, but that was more associated with the fact that it was originally designed for World War I at the time. But
for clearing out trenches.
Exactly. So that's a totally different story.
When you have a full-on Thompson machine gun with the gangster... the iconic gangster version like has a barrel
clip.
Drum,
yeah,
and a drum clip, and it'll hold a lot more ammo, so you can just keep shooting and everything like that. I think it is probably the sexiest looking gun in the history of guns.
Well, it's Valentine's Day. It's got to be sexy.
Yeah, we got to think about romantic. Like, if I were to date a gun, it would be a Tommy gun.
I bet that was like a Cosmo quiz at some point. So you would have been round clip drum gun.
I like how I can even talk about my favorite gun. I don't even own a gun, but I'm like, that's my favorite gun. I only want to own that one.
I have yet to discover...
No eyes for other guns.
I have to discover my fetish gun. I don't know yet. I'm still looking. So anyway, yes, the Chicago typewriter. Now, all 7 men that were lined up against the wall were obviously executed without warning. So I feel like that's such a horrifying thing because they were there. They're like, oh, yes, it's just like a booze raid. We've done this before. And then without knowing, they thought they were just going to get arrested, but they certainly were not.
Right, right.
Now, this is the cool part. When I say cool, like as in very clever, in my opinion. After the 4 men finished shooting everyone, the 2 police officers escorted the 2 regular dressed men in handcuffs. Okay. The intent was to make it look like the police had arrested the assailants that caused the gunshots, because at that point they knew that people would be looking in their direction. Okay. And this also prevented them from calling the police because the police was already there.
Yeah, yeah.
Sort of. So that was kind of very clever, I think. The only reason the bodies were eventually discovered was because one of the men that was killed had their dog tied up in the alleyway. The dog was barking for hours, and finally a woman that lived in a building upstairs grew concerned and wanted to make sure that the dog was okay. She noticed that the dog was barking towards the warehouse, but she was a little cautious and kind of scared to investigate by herself, so she asked a neighbor to go with her. Unfortunately for them, that's when they found the gruesome sight. The police were then called and arrived what would be estimated about 3 hours after the incident. The victims were all in some way associated with the Northside gang that was led by George Bugs Moran. So Bugs was kind of his nickname. 5 of them were actual members, one of which was second in command, Albert Kakalek. I don't know his name, but his alias was James Clark, which is the important part. This is the only name you'll have to remember. But there's going to be more coming up. Watch out. There was also Adam Hayer, the gang's bookkeeper and business manager, Albert Weinshank, who managed Moran's cleaning and dyeing operations, and gang enforcers Frank Gusenberg and Peter Gusenberg. Gussenberg? I don't know.
I'm not sure.
The other victims, John May and Reinhard Schwimmer, were not official gang members, but they were affiliated with through business transaction, and also they just like hanging out together, so they were just friends.
Hey man, you want to come here for some business? We got to go downtown to do some business.
I was like, I like business. Let's business. Now, all 7 did die from their injuries, but one of them, Frank Gusenberg, which was one of the enforcers, was still alive when he was found. He was rushed to the hospital, and doctors were able to stabilize him long enough for detectives to question him. Frank has sustained 14 bullet wounds. Like, that's a lot. And he was alive.
That's a hell of a lot of words per minute, if you ask me.
That's a typewriter for you. Just kidding. Oh, my God.
It was a typo, I swear. A typo.
Oh, my God. So, anyway, the police asked Frank, who shot you? His reply was,
Your mother.
No. Yo, mama. Oh, classic Chicago. I'm just kidding. No, he said, no one shot me. Then
I fell on some bullets.
Then he died. I'm sorry. This is not funny. Like, it's really not, but it's just like the whole scenario is so ridiculous. Basically, Frankie is no rat, is what we're learning here.
We're talking honor amongst thieves, hardcore
100%, yeah. So, anyway, yeah. So, good old Frankie. He never gave any information, so they kind of lost a lead there.
So, real quick, I know we're laughing and playing jokes about something that is actually very serious.
Right.
The one thing I can say is you can see the crime scene photos of this online.
It's horrifying.
And they are horrifying. I don't recommend.
I don't think.
Unless that's something you have unless you have the stomach for it and that's something you look for.
I mean, let me put it this way. It is black and white, at least the ones that I looked at. Yeah. And so, as far as like a lot of the true crime shows that I watched, this isn't like the most horrific scene you'll you'll come across, but at the same time,
it's not
pleasant. If you're not prepared, just don't look at it.
It's dead bodies. Right. So, I mean, it's not something anyone should... The first time's always the worst. Please don't make this be your first time.
Oh, trust me, in every single article I had to, like, come across, it was...
They have the pictures.
Every single time. So.
For some reason, they're like, old-timey death is okay.
Yeah, it's old enough. I mean, we don't care anymore, apparently. So, yeah. Anyway... It was suspected that Al Capone was the one who ordered the hit. The intention was to kill Bugs Moran, the leader of the North Side Gang, but obviously he wasn't one of them. Mm-hmm. Now, the last straw for this, like the reason why this was even ordered in the first place, was because Moran had interfered and hijacked on a big alcohol shipment of whiskey that was coming through on the river. Mm-hmm. And Capone was like, oh, no, you didn't. Now, it's believed that Al Capone had set up a fake transaction for a crate of high-end whiskey, which would have allured Moran and other high-ups in command for this transaction. So his intention was to actually, like, take down a lot of important people. And you know what? It almost worked, because Moran was going to be at the warehouse, except Moran had left his house late. When he and his driver arrived at the warehouse, they actually noticed the two police officers and the two other men arrive in a Cadillac.
And they bolted?
Well, yeah. So, like, at first they were like, oh, shit, what's going on? So Moran waited for a while, and he actually hid in a doorway in the alleyway. And he noticed the two police officers go in, and they're like, no. This is too, like, well, obviously it's dangerous. We can't go in there. Took down the Cadillac's license plate, and then bolted. So he actually got away. Now, I don't know how important it was that he took down the license plate. I don't know who he was going to tell. I think it was, like, for his own information. So just in case, like, he ever saw that car again. Mm-hmm. So anyway, here's the investigation part. Eventually, the Cadillac was found at a burning garage. The car had been partially disassembled and damaged from the fire, but they were able to get the engine number, which led them to an original dealership. And through that, they were able to track down the owner of the car. But that was also a dead end, because it seemed like it was a false information
thing. About covering your tracks.
It really, really was.
I mean, and this is back in the day.
Yeah.
When going through all this paperwork and everything and hoping it's even accurate, man, that's a thankless job.
It really is. Like, how do you even
It's not like a little click on the computer and you got it.
Nope.
Oh, man. Hardcore.
This would have been rough. Investigators did find the owner of the garage, who used to be a former St. Louis gangster who had ties with Capone. Like, they were, like, friendly with each other. But there was nothing else that could justify some sort of conviction. So they kind of, like, dropped it, obviously, you know. Also, minutes after the massacre, a truck driver accidentally ran into a police car a block away from the warehouse. The truck driver gave a description to the police, which included an important detail. The cop had a missing tooth. And the witnesses that saw the cops enter the warehouse also mentioned the missing tooth part. Now, police officers knew a guy, like a specific gangster that they had been looking at for a long time, called Fred Burke, a former Egan's rat gangster. And they were, like, convinced it was him. But, like, you can't convict someone because someone had a missing tooth. So, again, it's, like, so frustrating.
Circumstantial,
exactly. I think it's circumstantial. SVU, thank you for teaching me all these
I mean, let's also terms. Be fair. In 1929, the number of people missing a tooth is going to be a lot higher in America than it is today.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, yeah, so I have a missing tooth. So later that year in December, police would find themselves in a car chase with Burke, so the missing tooth guy, that would end in a gun shootout and killing another officer. Burke would actually escape. And it wasn't until modern science, specifically forensic ballistics, that we would be able to match the bullets from the car chase to the massacre. So they were able to like determine that it was like him. The same gun, at least. And it's very like obvious at that point with the missing tooth situation and whatnot. So yeah. Now there was another detail about Burke that I forgot to mention. So he had also committed other robberies. And he was also dressed as a police officer. So he had the uniform. They were pretty, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, so this was already his thing. Anyway, police also had other suspects of Capone's gang. But when they went to go arrest them, they found out that Capone already had them killed for different reasons. So it's so ridiculous. You're like, oh, okay, I can't even get this justice here. Eventually, the story unfolds as time goes on. Like, former gang members and their wives reveal their knowledge on the incident, so it kind of becomes very clear who were the assailants. But,
Absolutely.
you know, we no one was actually convicted because by that point, either they were dead or on the run, whatever. So let's get into the hauntings.
Now, I'm super curious to know if the hauntings are of where everyone got shot, or if these people who are dead are haunting different areas or different people. I'm just curious.
Ooh, I wish that was the case. So, like, here's the thing. It's more, I don't know, I guess it's a little bit of both. We'll see. Now, the building was still there until 1967, and it was eventually torn down for the sole reason that the city was attempting to clear out any infamous gangster sites. Like, they were just trying to get rid of evidence that, like, we had a shitty past.
Man, that's unfortunate because now that's like a huge tourist attraction historians care.
It really is. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's some things that come back, so let me get into that. The bricks leave the historical site, but they're still around.
My mom's seen some of them, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she went to the mob museum in Vegas, and I think they have some. I think they have some bricks with like bullets in them.
Okay, we're gonna get to that. I promise.
All right.
Yeah. So the brick wall, all with bullets and blood, was purchased by a Canadian businessman by the name of George Patay. A couple of years later, in 1971, so he bought them like in 1967 and held on to them, and he was trying to do like this tour thing where he's like, I have like the bricks you guys want to see and pay for it. But I guess that wasn't like enough. So he decided to open a bar/restaurant to display his love for 1920s gangster or other at that era kind of like
the Prohibition
memorabilia.
Era kind of thing.
So he was kind of like, I guess kind of like a speakeasy bar. I'm not sure.
So the reason the bricks were important, in case people are like kind of confused, is when these people were shot, they were shot near a wall, and the wall
they were
was
against the
filled.
wall.
Yeah, and so the bricks had, you know, the gangsters' blood on it. It had bullet casings and shells in it and everything. So I mean, it was literally where they died, as opposed to just a random brick. So it is kind of, for all of you who follow horror stuff, that makes it a significant item.
It really does.
In terms of creepiness.
Yeah. At the very least, it's gruesome. But there is things associated with that.
I mean, it's creepy enough. I would never want to own one. I'm just putting it that way.
Well, see, that's because you've been doing this show long enough. I've told you.
I now know.
You now know. So anyway, like the bar restaurant that I was talking about, it was called the Banjo Palace. It's located in, I think it was Vancouver, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't write that down. Don't worry about that. Now, his intention was to, like I said, create this like 1920s vibe. Now, where do you think he decided to display this wall?
Bathroom.
Yep.
I was thinking, the fact that you asked, I was like, it's got to be really tacky.
It so was. Oh, it gets worse. Let me tell you. So the guy, his name was, where's his name? George Patay. And so he installed the wall in the men's bathroom behind the urinal. And not only that, but the owner also decided to use plexiglass in front of it as protection because it was encouraged for men to try to aim the bullet holes.
Oh my God.
I'm not even kidding you. I feel so weird saying that because it's so disgusting.
We were laughing earlier.
Now that's disrespectful.
Like, if I knew I was about to be shot and then someone said right before I was like, by the way, men are going to try to pee on these bullet holes for fun in the future.
Yeah.
I don't know how my brain would contemplate that.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. Now, the bar was only open for 5 years and eventually closed down. So, at least it wasn't peed on that long. 5 years, maybe. But anyway, Patay did make sure to take the wall with him. So he had it for a while. However, at some point...
Can't go without that pee wall.
I can't leave that pee wall. But I don't know if it was because of hard times or whatever reason, but he did eventually decide to auction off some of the bricks. And a lot of them did end up at the Mob Museum. So the one that you're talking about that your mom went to. So they're absolutely there now. But at the time, there were private owners of like specific bricks. And depending on, as awful as it sounds, whether it had a bullet hole or blood on it, it was more valuable.
Absolutely. See, that's like the one reason I really want to go to Vegas is to see the Mob Museum.
Oh, I would love to go there. That sounds awesome. Now, as for the gangster history obsessed individuals, they would eventually become the perfect target. It turns out that buying bricks with blood and human flesh embedded inside could possibly retain some sort of negative energy. Now, with that said, let me tell you what horrible things they experienced. People began to feel like they were getting a series of bad luck. Like, as soon as they got the brick, there was this association, like something shifted. So I don't know. And it's so strange because a lot of them said that they were skeptics before. Like they didn't even think anything about it. It was just something that dawned on them after like bad stuff started happening to them.
Sure.
Some people began to feel chronic illness, and even people were getting in car accidents or that where they were severely hurt, and they were just bad times. Now, the brick owners would also try to get rid of them themselves by reselling them or donating them to the museum, because I think at that point the museum was trying to get as much of them as they could.
Sure.
And as the rumor also spread that the bricks were like haunted or cursed or whatever, people were rejecting them, like no one wanted them. Now, the Mob Museum, like I said, now has them, so that means that the Mob Museum has been having some hauntings of their own.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently that is a thing.
So the hauntings are always following these bricks.
Yes, exactly. And that's, I find, like, I don't know, like, really interesting. It's just, like, it's so, I don't know, like, ingrained in them. I know that sounds weird, but yeah.
You know my favorite shot glass, that heavy-duty glass one?
Oh, yeah, it does.
That was from the Mob Museum. The thing has washed off.
Yeah.
But it said the Mob Museum on it back in the day.
That's right. I do remember that. Now, the staff members have claimed to experience hearing loud, like banging sounds and even loud gunshots. They would also hear men moaning in agony or hearing what sounds like bodies falling on the ground, like all of this chaos at the same time. Of course, there would be no one around when this occurred. So they would think, like, do we call the police? Like, what's going on? And they would go investigate. And even on camera, there was just nothing. So, I don't know. Pretty cool. Now, if we go back to Chicago, where the warehouse once stood, you'll find that people have reported the exact same hauntings there. So you got the gunshots,
the moaning,
everything.
But the building's gone.
But the building is gone. Exactly. It's now, so today.
Now it's like a Sonic.
I wish. No.
You're like eating your hamburger and you just hear gunshots and you're just like, this is different.
Over here, we just call it the Gibson one.
I don't even know if they have Sonic in Chicago. They have like Hardee's.
Well, that's like the Carl's Jr., right?
Or Steak and Shake. Yeah, the Hardee's is the Carl's Jr. up there. They have Steak and Shake and A&W up there.
I don't even know Sonic. Yeah, it goes past Texas. Anyway, I don't know. Whatever. So, but today, the parking lot is a parking lot for a nursing home. There is one article that I read where they said they called it a psychic imprint, which I found like that's exactly the term I was thinking about.
Oh, yeah, we've heard about that.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, oh, yeah, duh. And so...
a moment being relived.
Kind of relived, but
echoing.
Yeah, because like their spirits and their ghosts probably aren't there, but there's something about the energy that is stored there. Like it's constantly, I don't know, causing some sort of chaos.
Yeah.
Because again, in that same area in Chicago, dogs that walk by the parking lot will act erratic. Either they'll bark in the direction where the old warehouse used to be, or they'll cower in fear, but they'll like have some sort of extreme feeling.
Interesting.
Yeah. People also experience these intense emotions when they either get close to the property. They would also feel intense fear or panic. And that's kind of like their own words too. They're like, I couldn't even get close to it. Or when I did, I felt like I needed to leave immediately.
Totally.
There were reports of strange lights and mist forming where the bricks once stood. So that could actually be the ghost manifesting if they're in that area.
Interesting.
I don't know if that happened in the Mob Museum. I never saw any like articles discussing that. It was more like the noise, something associated with the bricks. But the ghost situation, that seems specific to Chicago.
So the bricks were imprinted, but the spirits seem to be
unrest.
Hanging around there.
Yeah. I saw this one video where they said that in Chicago, the realty where this warehouse used to stand, it's totally kind of vacant. I mean, it's a parking lot, but it could be a structure. But unfortunately, the city has said that there will never be a structure built on there. I don't know if it's because they're trying to conserve it, or I don't know what the deal is, but they said it's probably going to be a parking lot for the rest of time.
Perfect.
But that doesn't mean like things have not occurred.
Depressing.
Yeah.
Can you just imagine back before like the city was built? You see like this like beautiful grassland or hill or whatnot. It's like one day this will be a parking lot and it will stay that way for eternity. And you're just like, oh man, now I'm all depressed.
Oh my God.
I
right?
hate parking lots so much.
I mean, it's a small parking lot, so it's not.
It's not even good.
It could be like a really nice vertical building, but nope, it's a parking lot. Now, with that said, it doesn't mean, I don't know what the prevention was for. Maybe they were conserving and they didn't want to like bring attention to the building or the area of the massacre. They're trying to hold on to like these old ideas that they were glorifying gangster culture and things like that. But anyway, so the owner of the building that's right next door to the site says that he often experienced poltergeist activity, and it's often off the walls that is facing where the warehouse was. So it just seems like there's like this explosion of energy coming from that area that people are like experiencing.
What do you
like,
think it is about the deaths that make it? I mean, yes, we know it was a lot of people who died in a singular moment, but do you think it has to do with like a betrayal, the trick that makes it so different that like, because I mean, there have been a lot of situations where a lot of people have died before. Like, what do you think is specific about this moment that would lend it to being?
Maybe it's like also confusion because they didn't even know they were going to die. It's just like this very super like left field kind of moment for them. And then they're kind of maybe wandering, or they're just like super pissed. You know, they're gangsters. They're like, I need my revenge. I need to like get back at them. And that's how it was. Who knows?
Do you have any evidence of like mediums coming there and just being like,
you know, only to say that, you know, mediums have gone to the site and they say, of course, there's energy here. And they talk about how like it's definitely haunted and there's unrest souls on the site. Now, when they talk about the bricks and everything, the only thing that I was able to gather is that whole like imprint mentality. Like it's like, yeah, there is negative energy, but not necessarily that something specifically is holding on to it. Like you know, like you didn't buy a brick and bought a ghost. Like it's just like it's just negative energy.
You get a ghost. And you get a ghost.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like that. So here's another strange fact that I found while my research. It was said that Al Capone began to claim that he was being haunted by a ghost named James Clark. Now, if you remember earlier, I said there's only one name you need to remember.
And it was James Clark.
Yep. Now, one of the victims that was murdered, it was his alias name, but his name was James Clark during the Valentine's Massacre. Now, while incarcerated in the Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, he began to complain that there was someone else in the cell with him. Being such a high-profile criminal with unlimited means, Capone had a luxurious cell, at least in comparison to the standard living conditions. Theoretically, he should have been fine, but almost every night, other prisoners in neighboring cells would often hear Capone scream in fear, saying things like, "Leave me alone, Jimmy." Yeah, other times people would hear him talk to himself, or like what would seem like he was talking to someone else. I mean, there's a distinction. Like when you talk to yourself, it's like one way, but when you're talking to someone else,
they do sound different.
Yeah, because you're kind of waiting for a response, and then you talk. So that's kind of what they meant. Now, real quick, the Eastern State Penitentiary is considered to be one of the most haunted places in the world, which I plan to cover in the future. I just felt like I couldn't just bypass the fact that I mentioned it and then like not say it was haunted, but it totally is. Anyway, so after serving his time, Capone was released from prison, which he also hoped the ghost would stay behind. But unfortunately for him, Jimmy followed him anyway.
I mean, if it made it all the way to prison.
Yeah, exactly. He found him there.
It's got means.
Right. Yeah, he knows. He's got a Cadillac. He's good. So because of this, Capone decided to hire a medium to get the ghost to the other side. So like he was like, "Can you get rid of this spirit?" It did not work. But but he did try, so it's okay.
The medium probably hated this guy. He's like, I'm not gonna really.
He
do
just
anything.
like actually cursed him with the demon instead. He's like, whatever. So Capone would again be convicted in another crime and go back to prison. But this time he was actually shipped off to Alcatraz in San Francisco. Also, a super haunted place. So we'll keep that in mind.
I've been there, so I can't wait till...
I know.
Maybe I should do that story because I've been there.
Right. I've never been there.
Yeah,
so.
Alcatraz, it's the only thing I liked doing in San Francisco. So,
ooh, dis.
Dis. No, I mean, seriously, if you... There's no one in San Francisco listening to this podcast because they make too much money to listen to our poor podcast.
I need my high-end podcast.
Yeah, they want the rich ones. Anyway.
Oh, my gosh. So anyway, yeah, so he was in Alcatraz, and there, unfortunately, he said that, like, Jimmy was still haunting him, so that hasn't changed, but Capone's behavior also became more and more strange, and and to the point where he was eventually examined, like, they thought there was something wrong with him. It was discovered that he had syphilis.
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did, and he apparently knew about it for a long time.
Remember.
But didn't want to be treated.
Yeah, back in the day... I'm just kidding.
1920s day.
Yeah, I was going to say, just remember, kids, flies spread disease, so keep yours closed.
What? Sorry, I was taking a drink. Oh, my God. That is sound advice, Jace.
Yeah, we all know that Al Capone was using his power to get freaky with a lot of the ladies, and back then when condom use wasn't super frequent, you're just going to get...
Right, and this would have been a time that there was absolutely no... cure for it.
It's pre-antibiotics.
Pre-antibiotics, yep.
But actually, when it, if I'm not mistaken, and I am not a doctor, when syphilis starts affecting the brain, I think it's in such a late stage that even nowadays, I don't think you can. I think you'll still die from it or something like that. You can't
reverse the damage it's done at that point.
Okay.
So
I know it's bad once it affects your brain.
Yeah, like from what I understand, you can stop it, but like the damage that like the erosion that it's causing your brains or even other organs, it depends on where it's spread.
So the assumption here is that there's a chance he was just going crazy.
Now, that's kind of why I brought it up, because once you have neurological problems, which I think it's called neurosyphilis or something like that, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, you're good. But you're done.
But I would just assume that maybe when that happens, it'd be pretty quick. So in his defense, for such a long period of time, maybe he was seeing stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And he just happened to also have syphilis.
Well, they always say that the closer you are to death, the more likely you are to experience some sort of paranormal event or like be able to see or be more sensitive to it.
Totally.
I mean, that was basically like, I mean, we see it as a trope in a lot of horror movies, but this is kind of the reason why it's a trope is because a lot of people do believe this and like, you know, experience it themselves. So anyway, I don't know if the syphilis allowed him to finally be haunted by literally his own demons, like ghosts that were trying to like attack him or whatever. But yeah, he was pretty sick in his later years. Yeah, so, you know, whatever. But that is my story.
All right. So two things we have to do. We have to go to the Mom Museum and look at the haunted bricks.
Obviously.
I'm all about doing that. And if for some reason we ever find ourselves in San Francisco, I'll take you to Alcatraz and you can see Capone's cell.
Oh, that's right.
And that's really cool.
Yeah.
They also have other important cells about the guys who escaped and everything, but we'll do that story a different time.
I wonder if they have it at the other one. The one in Philadelphia?
Well, it depends, because I think the one in Alcatraz, you know, I could be wrong about the history. I think it may have been shut down so other people didn't, like, ruin his cell or anything like that, whereas the one in Pennsylvania may have had, like, 50 inmates afterwards.
And it was, like, pretty crowded, and yeah. I don't know if he had this, I think he had the good treatment probably in both, but I definitely know it was at the Eastern State Penitentiary.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Jails are just creepy. Because no one has a good time in jail. So it's just a genuinely terrible place. So when it's haunted, you're like, well, of course it is.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
But see, here's the thing. I think it was like, I'm not even joking. I have to really dig into my past memory of all ghost hunting shows that I watch. But I think the original like Ghost Hunters show that I absolutely love, they went to the Eastern State Penitentiary. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they had actual like footage, like this really cool, convincing thing. It was such a big deal at the time. I'm hoping it's the right prison that I'm thinking of, because, you know, they go to multiple ones, but I think this is the one. And it like blew my mind. I think that was the moment. I think it was like in 9th grade or some shit like that when it first like aired, and I was like, this is happening. Ghosts are real. I'm convinced. And I don't know. I was like super over the moon about it.
So it sounds like we need to go to Scranton and then we need to go to this penitentiary.
Priorities, but yes, absolutely. So yeah, I love it.
Man, this whole thing has made me just want to watch some more gangster movies.
I think we should watch Oscar, and I need to like revisit that joke.
And The Untouchables.
Yeah.
I just love gangster movies.
Also, oh God, what's the one with the Ray Liotta? And now I keep forgetting. Like, I'm totally... Goodfellas, yeah. That was like probably the first gangster movie I ever saw. Yeah.
Just so good.
Yeah.
I dig it. Well, awesome story.
Well,
I think we should take our regularly scheduled break, and we'll be back in just a few for my story.
Yes. Okay, guys, we're back. I have my rum. Chase has another story, and I hope
and I've got another hop tea for your information.
Sorry. You're right. You have your hop tea.
Different flavor, but same benefit of carbonation, hops, and no alcohol that I miss so much.
What's the flavor?
They call it the Citra Bomb one. So it's
okay.
This one's white tea with Citra hops. Last one was black tea with Mosaic hops.
Yeah, I actually tried that one. I really liked it, but the Mosaic one is like way better, I think.
I think they're both great. They're slightly different, but
variety.
The benefit this one has over the other is less caffeine, which I really like.
And it is later in the day, so this is beneficial.
And I don't drink much caffeine, so I'm going to be wired. But
and I drink caffeine, and I'm like, I'm going to take a nap. It's fine.
So it's time for my story. I actually discovered the subject of today's story while researching last week's episode, which, if you have listened to it or haven't listened to it as a refresher, was about Spring-Heeled Jack, a cryptid that haunted England during the 19th century. So from about 1830 till the late 1800s, it was common for supernatural occurrences, mysterious figures, and unexplained attacks to be associated with Spring-Heeled Jack. He was sort of a boogeyman figure, but one specific mystery that was blamed by some to have been caused by Spring-Heeled Jack caught my eye. And that's how I discovered this other story and went with it. So, in general, it isn't Spring-Heeled Jack, but some people said it was, but it just led me to this.
Okay.
Today, I'm going to be talking about the Devil's Footprints.
I'm sorry, what?
It's called the Devil's Footprints.
Yeah.
Now, I also discovered there is a specific geological site where they have something called the Devil's Footprints. I'm not talking about that. That's up in Canada. I'm talking about something that happened in England in the 1800s. So.
Oh, lovely. Is this related? I know you said like that brought you to the story. I'm pretty sure you'll let me know.
We'll get to it, I promise.
I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm jumping the gun again. But anyway, go on.
The night of February 8th, 1855, brought a considerable amount of snow to the region of Devon, a region located in southwestern England. The locals woke up to a fresh white blanket covering the ground. Only there was something else that seemed quite odd. In more than 30 areas throughout the region, people reported seeing strange hoofmark tracks throughout the snow.
Like bipedal?
The estimates of the total length of all the tracks reached from between 40 miles all the way up to 100 miles in length.
Holy fuck.
That's 60 to 160 kilometers to all our metric friends out there. That's an absurd distance to travel in the hours during a single night.
God
damn. Fresh snow, 100 miles of tracks.
Yeah. And without it being covered. So, like, if it was constantly snowing, yikes.
But what makes these tracks even more baffling is that they crossed terrain that would seem impassable. The tracks would be seen on both sides of a river, over houses, haystacks, and even up to and through drain pipes too small for a normal human to fit through.
It's like a shapeshifter or something. Ew.
An article from Bell's Life in Sydney, all the way down in Australia, but you know how close England and Australia be.
So close.
So the article came out a few months after the incident, described the scene quite well. Quote, "On the following morning, the inhabitants of the above towns were surprised at discovering the footmarks of some strange and mysterious animal endowed with the power of ubiquity, as the footprints were to be seen in all kinds of unaccountable places, on the tops of houses and narrow walls, in gardens and courtyards that were enclosed by high walls and palings, as well as open fields. The superstitious go so far as to believe that they are marks of Satan himself, and that great excitement has been produced among all classes may be judged from the fact that the subject has been descanted from the pulpit. Descanted from the pulpit, end quote. Understandably, the people in the area were both mystified but terrified. Mm-hmm. It wasn't long before the notion that they were nefarious in nature took hold, and the name the Devil's Footprints became forever associated with this incident. Most of the tracks appeared to look like a strange hoof. Some described it as having similarities to that of a donkey, while others suggested it had a more cloven hoof shape, which, if you know anything about it, the cloven hoof is supposed to look kind of demonic.
Yep. Yeah.
As someone who knows fuck all about tracking and animal hooves, I really have no say in the matter. There were some drawings and measurements taken in some of the print areas, and I can concur that they look like hooves and not feet. They were around 4 inches long and 3 inches across, or 10 centimeters by 7.5 centimeters. The prints were often between 8 and 16 inches apart, or 20 to 40 centimeters. The print pattern suggested, and this is to answer your question earlier, I just knew it was coming.
Yeah.
The print pattern suggested that it was single file and bipedal.
Oh,
meaning they appeared to be that of a two-legged animal and not from a donkey, or, as some suggested, or any other four-legged animals.
Yeah.
Although there is no direct evidence of it, many of the claims were that the footprints went straight through the snow to the ground and that they appeared to have been burned there.
Oh my God. What? Oh, so like it almost like it melted down into
went straight through the snow.
Yeah.
You know, because usually when you step on snow, it compacts.
Right.
Which means you saw the hoof print go all the way through the snow to the ground and there was no compacted snow below it.
Oh, yeah. No. I'm concerned now as a citizen.
Oh, no. Absolutely. So when I was like researching Spring Heel Jack, I'm like, some people claim that he was the cause of the Devil's Footprints. I'm like, what the hell's the Devil's Footprints? And I looked at that and I'm like, oh, that's a story.
Yeah, that's a whole nother animal. Because like you don't even know if it really is still Spring Heel Jack, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, it could be, but this sounds like really, I don't know.
It's a little different.
Yeah.
Because as we discover Spring Heel Jack, some people think it was just one or a small group of people who were playing pranks that had devil masks on, but they were dressed in nice suits.
Fine attire.
They didn't have hooves. They had shoes.
Why do I feel like Spring Heel Jack was like this whole thing with these kind of high, super like aristocratic young men who were like,
engaged in evil tomfoolery,
but also because like it was part of a haze or like some sort of like club or I don't know. I feel like it's too much.
Yeah. It was. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, it's totally different from this, I think.
Compounding the people's unease was the fact that many of the tracks would stop at the doors to people's houses. So you'd see all these, a mile of hoof prints around. And then all of a sudden it stops at your front door, which either means it's super creepy or somehow this also is a weird prank.
So
but see, it's hard because if you do it, you have to step backwards perfectly in your fake hoof prints, which is really hard. And you can't do... It's already amazing that they might have been able to go 100 miles in one night, but to be able to do any sorts of backtracking, it's just...
So did it feel like those houses or wherever it stopped, were they like marked? Did anything come from that?
No, but... Many of the people who lived in those homes refused to leave their houses for quite some time afterwards because they were scared.
Yeah.
What made this even more mysterious is that the tracks never appeared again, despite subsequent snowfalls in the following days.
Wow.
You would think that if it were some regular animal or something obvious, the tracks would repeat at some point, the next day or even, just a while later, like, oh, these are normal tracks.
Right.
But they never came back. At least... Not in that region.
Lord.
And to be fair, it wasn't the only time something like this had been seen. There are multiple stories of this type of event happening before, and they are similarly mysterious. In 1840, the mysterious tracks appeared in the center of Scotland. Like, literally, if you look at Scotland's map and you just put the center, it's right there.
Okay, so like actual center. Like
it was described
not
as as where three places meet that I can't pronounce.
Ah, perfect.
So I'm not even trying. The event was documented in the March 14th issue of The Times.
Okay.
Quote, The print of the foot in every respect is an exact resemblance of that of a foal of considerable size, with this small difference perhaps that the sole seems a little longer or not so round, but as no one has had the good fortune as yet to have obtained a glimpse of the creature, nothing more can be said of its shape or dimension, only it has been remarked from the depth of which the feet sunk into the snow that it must have been a beast of considerable size. It has also been observed that its walk is not like that of any generality of quadrupeds, and that it is more like the bounding or limping of a hare when not scared or pursued. It is not in one locality only that its tracks have been met with, but throughout a range of at least 12 miles. So they said in that it seemed bipedal, like a hare that's limping, but also that it had considerable size because of how deep it was going in the snow, which is something. So they said, okay, hoof prints, kind of like we've seen, but a little bit different, but it seems to be two-legged and obviously huge.
It just sounds like they're picking characteristics from a lot of animals, which is like the most demonic thing I've heard all day. Because that's exactly...
I try to hear at least 3 demonic things a day. This one takes the cake.
This one wins. Yeah. So obviously this is kind of like a bastardization of what a creature would be on our planet, and so it's just like this weird manifestation and disgustingness and creepy. Ugh, this is like a really creepy story.
That same year, on the other side of the world, another set of mysterious tracks were found. Explorer James Clark Ross and his crew landed on the Kerguelen Islands, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I've never heard of these islands before.
Okay.
These islands, also known as the Desolation Islands, are in the southern Indian Ocean near Antarctica.
I've heard of these.
And when I say they are in the middle of nowhere, I fucking mean it. So, between Australia and Africa, if you drew a line between those two, the tip, the southern tip of Africa and Australia, drew a line and then went halfway in between and then just continued south towards Antarctica, you'll find this selection of islands, middle of nowhere.
Super habitable.
These are cold and inhospitable places, and apparently after landing on the island, Ross and his crew discovered a set of prints in fresh snow.
Ugh.
They had the same size and shape of those that would be found in Devon 15 years later, and they appeared to be that of a two-legged creature of notable weight. The problem is that whether or not it's a two-legged or four-legged, there are no known hooved animals on the island.
Oh, God. That is just so disgusting. Ugh.
Even the Wikipedia article claims insects are the primary animal on the islands, save for types of sea-bearing things like penguins, seabirds, shit like that.
Right.
Rabbits do exist, but they weren't introduced to the islands until 1874, many years later.
Yeah, I was like, totally not the same.
And only on some of the islands. So the crew tried to follow the prints, but they lost them in an area where the snowfall was minimal. I can't tell if it's because it had coverage, because I doubt it was trees, because all the pictures I saw of these islands, I don't really see a lot of trees. But it could
be ice or some sort of rock formation. I don't know, maybe.
But one thing I did find out while looking at these islands, completely off top, but maybe you guys will find interesting, the reason a lot of people who went... people on boats loved going there, especially in the 1800s, is a kind of vegetable grows there that grows nowhere else. It's a very specific kind of cabbage.
I was wondering why they were there.
So they would eat this cabbage and it had a lot of stuff that helped fight scurvy.
Oh,
had a lot of important vitamins and had vitamin C and everything like this. And so it was just something that they ate, and all of a sudden, the fat guy in me is like, I wonder what that tastes like. But yeah,
I'm how can I cook this?
But you saw this barren wasteland. It looked like the Mount Doom area of Lord of the Rings, and all of a sudden you see these patches of green. They're yeah, this is cabbage. And so the islands where these rabbits do exist now, the cabbage is pretty much gone because the rabbits have eaten the shit out of it.
Well, yeah, they're kind of invasive.
Yeah, but the islands where there's no rabbits, the cabbage is still there. Anyway, sorry for that off-topic thing.
No, I think that's very. I had no idea. I thought I'm like, are they on the way to something? Like, why are they even there? Like, I don't know.
Well, they said explore, so I have a feeling
that's right.
These
Okay.
islands had been discovered, I think, in the 1700s. But sometimes people just want to let's see what else we can find here, because they didn't have GPS or anything like this. They're like, maybe there's another island
Let's
right
map
around
this
here.
out. Like,
Yeah,
let's figure it
exactly.
out. Yeah.
So back to the proclaimed devil's footprints in Devon, where we started the story.
Right.
As we established in last week's episode, people were just eager to be scared of things during this time. They're like, oh man, it's Sunday. I'm not scared of something today. Let's find something.
Right.
They wanted to be terrified. And first, it was Spring-Heeled Jack. And now it was the devil visiting England. And then there were those that suggested that these footprints were made by Spring-Heeled Jack. Maybe they were the same, which at least kind of makes sense considering how many of the prints were on rooftops. Because if you remember, Spring-Heeled Jack was all about jumping on rooftops and doing all these crazy things,
Like
going over things.
Creepy Santa Claus. It's okay.
Yeah. And he was described as looking devilish and everything like this,
Yeah.
kind of creepy. So all this led to another level of widespread panic with the locals. One early explanation that brought relief to people was that it was a kangaroo that escaped a nearby zoo. Now, think about it for a second. A kangaroo in England, very exotic animal, very weird. It would have tracks people aren't familiar with.
And you mentioned before, Australia and the UK at this point were very
BFFs.
connected. Like, total BFFs.
Yeah, it's no longer a prison colony. All that good stuff.
They're like, we're good, right? And Australia's like, yeah, go fuck yourself. But right.
So this explanation was given by a Reverend G.M. Musgrave. However, many years later, it was proven that the Reverend made up this story in an effort to calm his congregation down and guide them away from believing Satan was walking around outside. I found two different sources for this. One claimed he admitted it while alive, and the other suggested that the documents were actually found in the 1950s that he had written that said, I made this up.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because essentially, all the people that he was preaching to were terrified, saying the devil was here, the devil's here. So he made up this lie so that they stopped thinking that, because he thought that this was a level of panic and weird.
Right.
So he lied.
He wanted to, just completely... Well, I mean, I don't know, because what if them panicking and all this was bringing this things too? Like, maybe he's like, if we just stop thinking about it and we pretend it doesn't exist, maybe we can calm down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you talk to some people today who know about the devil's footprints, a lot of them will still claim it was a kangaroo. If you look at a kangaroo's footprint or
it's
hoofprint,
long.
It does not look anything like these.
I completely agree. And I feel like at this point in time, people would absolutely know. Like, it's more commonly known.
Yeah, people wouldn't have known what a
the
kangaroo's
distinction.
footprint looked like at the time. That said, though, if you ever do look at a kangaroo's footprint online, it is terrifying looking.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, I would say it looks like a dinosaur footprint for the most part.
But it's elongated.
It's
so
very
different
long, and it's
not
sharp
a
at
hoof.
the ends.
It's not a hoof.
No.
Yeah.
They are freaky looking.
Yeah.
So what are these mysterious footprints?
Oh my god, do you have the answer? And
No,
I'm just over
I
here
don't.
freaking out.
This is unanswered. But we're going to talk about what people have postulated.
Okay, good.
The number of reports from the 1855 sighting are staggering, and they extend through a rather massive area. I think it's important to remember that all this took place in the mid-19th century, so word travels considerably slower than it does today. For all these prints to appear in a single night would make this being a prank or a hoax a considerably laborious undertaking, and would have required considerable planning. Although it should be mentioned that since they are footprints in the snow, and this was before photography was widespread. I mean, photography existed,
right.
But I mean, most of these people might not have ever even seen a photograph, but they were called types and made out of metal at the time. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway.
Oh, okay.
So it's hard to say exactly how they looked. We only have descriptions and crude sketches of them. So, I'd really like to be able to say this is exactly what it looked like, but it's like some guy who doesn't draw drew a sketch and then people described it.
Yeah, you can only do what you can. I mean, you can't just grab your phone, which, by the way, is still unreliable.
Exactly.
So,
but because we're missing photographic evidence, this could suggest that several different sets of tracks that were not related were assumed to be the same. In fact, I'm sure that happened at least a few times where there was a normal animal's hoofprint or something that other people, they heard about all this, and I saw footprints or hoofprints too.
Yeah.
But I'm betting, when we're talking 100 miles of it, that's not what was completely happening. No, there was no way all the animals got together and did this in one night.
Well, I mean, if it was a migration thing, then it would have been more than one pair.
They'd see it every year. They'd see it all wouldn't have happened on a single day.
Yeah,
exactly.
These people were like studying this at the time. They would have caught on.
So all this is suggesting that it's probably not just animals, and that if it's a hoax or whatnot, that's also, these things are just so unrealistic because of how they would have had to be performed, especially since no one took grand claim of it in the 170 years since.
And that's the thing, because like a lot of people do want, I don't know if that means like fame or whatever, but like, or even think like there would be other people coming up with saying like, oh, I know what it is, it's this or that. As far as I know, or what you're telling me, no one had any idea. Like,
or on a deathbed, even
something.
A great grandson's like, my great grandfather did that, or something like that. Yeah,
but I guess I was just talking about like medians too. Like, did they ever come out of the woodwork and said, you know, I know what's happening? Or no,
a lot of people have said, oh, they're the results of badgers, jumping mice, and actually limping rabbits and everything, but I mean, we're talking 100 miles.
Yeah.
Overnight. That's crazy.
And it's like a consistent.
Yeah, well, I mean, and apparently
trail.
The tracks weren't straight lines. They were kind of weird.
Right.
So anyway, there was one explanation that I thought was interesting, worth talking about, and that was, bear with me.
Oh my God. The reflection of Jupiter.
No, but you were on the right track.
Okay, I'm just kidding.
That it was a balloon.
Oh, wait, what?
So, isn't it amazing how balloons are being blamed for unexplained things even when it has nothing to do with aliens or UFOs?
I'm starting to see a pattern here.
So, this theory proposed by Jeffrey Household claims that a hot air balloon was accidentally released and it was dragging mooring ropes with metal shackles on the end. And this would explain the bizarre prints.
Maybe the bobbing.
Being two, and they were bumping up and down while this balloon was moving. And it would explain the extreme lengths of travel, 100 miles.
Sure.
As well as how it would have continued over houses and other obstacles.
Okay, I'm not going to lie. It's not that dumb.
A man interviewed by Household claims his grandfather worked at the Devon dockyard at the time when the balloon was accidentally launched. The reason it was never reported was because the balloon caused significant damage to various properties, and they didn't want to get in trouble.
Fair.
However, the biggest argument against the balloon theory is how they didn't get caught or tangled on any plants or any trees despite traveling 100 miles low enough to the ground to still drag ropes along.
And also, I was going to argue
maintaining an altitude.
And I was going to say like the same pattern, because if it was bobbing, there would inevitably be dragging
or some sort individual
of
prints, and and at some point there would be ropes being dragged, so it would have been a very unclean tracks.
I mean, at some point it would get a rhythm as long as the plane was even, but it doesn't sound like it was.
Absolutely. And even if we believe that theory, it wouldn't explain the other sightings in the other years. It wouldn't explain Scotland or the other islands.
Right, yeah.
Especially the islands, because there shouldn't be a fucking balloon there.
There shouldn't be anything out there. No, like, you can't get that back. It's in the middle of nowhere.
So we can say at this moment, I have never seen an explanation. There's no generally accepted explanation. There's no generally accepted explanation. This is a mystery.
I'm not going to lie. I'm a little mad you covered this, because this would have been something I would have so enjoyed getting into. But also, I'm so fucking happy that you told it to me, because I had no idea. Oh my God.
And I have one little tidbit to add.
Oh, yes. Tell me more.
In 2009, similar looking prints were seen once again.
2009?
Yeah, a few years ago.
Okay. A few years ago? The other day.
13 years ago. Similar looking prints were seen once again in the area of Devon.
Okay, what is up with Devon?
The prints were similar shape and size. However, the prints did not extend as far as those from 1855, nor did anyone else have the chance to witness them as well. It could just be a normal animal being associated with a legendary horror story.
Yeah.
Or perhaps the devil has come back.
Oh my God.
And
so
that's my story.
I love it. I just have a question. So like, how far did those footprints extend to? Did they give like a range?
I couldn't get information.
Okay.
And the fact that it was just like one woman reported it seems like it could just be one person saying, hey, let's do this. Because apparently that was blamed for the renewed interest in the devil's footprint.
Okay. But at the very least, if it is interesting to know that people are still in their back of their minds thinking about it. Like it hasn't stopped.
I mean, the other ones I talked about had a lot of witnesses. They were documented. These were big deal. They were in newspapers and everything.
Yeah.
This one right here in 2009, it's just interesting. But I'm totally willing to believe it has nothing to do with that.
But the lore continues.
But the lore continues.
Yeah.
Just like Spring Hill Jack apparently does.
Right.
So that's totally my story.
I love it. This is my favorite. Yeah.
So
one of my favorites.
I know
so far.
It wasn't Valentine's theme.
It could be Valentine. It could be like, some stalker. Like, who's stalking you? Valentine's, they love you.
But I do think it's interesting that you mentioned the, seeing Venus in the sky. And I was talking about the balloon for UFO.
Right.
Even though today's story wasn't a UFO story, I do want to give a quick heads up to any of you listeners that enjoy that sort of thing and actually listen to my UFO stories when I cover them on the show. And, don't just turn it off when Lily's done talking.
Because I'm so fucking entertaining, apparently.
So I studied computer animation and digital art for my degree. And even though I don't work in that field, although I hope to one day, it means I follow a lot of that stuff online. And one YouTube channel I follow is called Corridor Digital. They are a group of visual effects artists who do lots of amazing things and have a variety of different types of videos. Recently, they unexpectedly started analyzing alleged UFO videos.
Yes! Oh my god, I read about this slightly. I read the title. I didn't actually look at the article.
So imagine how convenient that was for me, being obsessed with visual effects and covering a lot of UFO stuff on this show. So these guys are experts when it comes to how both cameras function and what digital and practical effects do look like, the problems with them, the things that give them away, the tells. And that means that they have been looking at UFO videos and very realistically and believably debunking them. They even did a video that I talked about on a previous episode that I thought was pretty mysterious. They did it and debunked it in the episode, and it was awesome. Like, they did such a good job at it. Which,
by the way, I don't know what to say about that. Like, it scares me at the same time, but also it doesn't explain the things from the past. So,
no, exactly. Some things, especially a crappy photograph's really hard to debunk.
Well, no, I just meant like video, even in the 90s, and what I mean. But anyway, my point is that it just makes it that much harder to find things, the truth or whatever. Anyway. I'm over here being like a believer, so whatever. Just ignore me.
I greatly appreciate this kind of work because I think we need to debunk all the fake stuff. So just like you said, that when we find something compelling and hard to debunk, it makes it better. I essentially think most of the stuff out there is totally fake, and I like that they are providing people the information to be able to look at them and go like, this is how you can tell it's fake.
I do appreciate it. Like, I want to know if something's real. So if there's any way to like disprove it, I'm all about it. Like, I don't want to just jump on the wagon.
Even if you don't care about the UFO stuff, if any of you guys are visual effects junkies like me, the channel's totally worth listening to. So I just wanted to throw that in there because it's just absolutely fascinating. And I'm obviously not going to cover their debunks on the show. But
you should always like mention them at the very least to see if they have some sort of information or explanation. Because like, I feel like people who have super like expertise, knowledge on this kind of technology, they'd be like, well, if it was happening today, this is how they would do it. But at the time, to know the technology that was existing at the time, like how they would even explain it if there was even an explanation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know if any of that made sense. I'm on my second rum cup, so cheers to you guys.
Well, it made sense to me, and I'm not drinking the boozy yet.
Okay, good. As long as I'm coherent, I'm good.
So anyway, I guess that was our Valentine's Day episode, even though I'm pretty sure most people aren't even going to listen to it on Valentine's Day.
Still, though, happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, happy Valentine's Day to all you. Use it as a good reason to watch some really fun horror films.
Yeah, we had 2 recommendations. I'm sure you have the time.
Yeah.
Within the week. I mean, they're just good all the year. You don't have to wait for Valentine's Day. They're great movies.
Absolutely. So I think that brings our episode to a close.
Yep, this is the end.
So thanks for joining us. And if you have any comments, questions, or personal scary stories you want to share, drop us a line at hotwpodcast@gmail.com. We post episodes every weekend. And cheers if you were drinking along with us today. And for those of you listening to us because you had just too much fun last night and you're suffering today, don't worry, because the best cure for a hangover
is fear.
Bye.
Happy Valentine's Day.